Hello YouTube and fellow DC Comic fans. I'm Keith One Shot, and this is episode 3 of the Post-Crisis Podcast. Okay, so on today's episode I'm going to talk about my 3 favorite comic books from the week of July 25th, 2018, which was 2 days ago. I read all the books that I enjoyed this week, and I had enough time to digest them and reread them and kind of like formulate my opinions on the issues. The 3 books that I'm going to talk about today are Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps issue 49, Doomsday Clock issue 6, and The Flash issue 51. Okay, where to start off? I think we'll start off with Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps issue 49. Okay, so this is the second to last issue in the Rob Venditti run of the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, and in it we've been dealing with the Black Star Mantle, the Black Star, it's the Dark Star Mantle rather, and there's been this epic war that's been raging on between the Green Lantern Corps and the Dark Star Mantle, as the Dark Stars believe in killing the enemies, not capturing them, in ridding the universe and the planets of scum, and not giving out second chances. And if you're a criminal, you're always a criminal and you're gonna die. So they're ruling with an iron fist, and the Green Lantern Corps believes in rehabilitating criminals, and maybe they can become heroes. And in that, we actually see that as the Green Lantern Corps is actually teaming up with General Zod. They're teaming up with Hector Hammond. They have Yellow Lantern Archilles in there, and Orion. He's not really a bad guy though, but he's with them as well. But it shows the diversity, and it shows that they're not going to kill the Dark Stars during this fight as well, to try to prove their point. So there's multiple battles happening in that storyline where Guy Gardner, Kyle Rayner, and all of the people that they seek help with are battling the Dark Stars on the Dark Stars' homeworld, whereas John Stewart is leading up a separate front with Kilowog and the Guardians and several other Green Lanterns on the planet Mogo. And basically what happens in issue number 49 is there's like a two-pronged attack, because we have Hal Jordan and Hector Hammond going after the controllers, and the controllers are able to create this psychic link. Create this psychic link that allows the Dark Star Mantle to communicate with each other. And so Hector Hammond, being the God Brain, as he likes to call himself, has been brought here by Hal Jordan to try to overwhelm the minds of the controllers. All seven of them are linked together, and to shut down communications. As soon as that happens, and Hector Hammond does that, the Dark Stars start getting like attacked in their brains, and they can't communicate it with each other. So Tumar 2 actually tells all of them to go back to their homeworld, and so they have this like teleporting ability. So they teleport back to their homeworld, but that's exactly what they planned for, because they had this force there of Guy Gardner and Kyle Rayner and those guys. And in that, now Tumar 2 goes and confronts Hal Jordan in the middle there, and Hal Jordan obviously is battling Tumar 2, which is a really great fight. And then we see John Stewart activate this cyclone, this green energy cyclone. I forgot exactly what he calls it, but it's pretty much like a teleporter that sends the Green Lanterns from Mogo now onto the planet. So we were already waiting for them on the planet and fighting some of them on the planet and right outside of the planet, and now the Dark Stars all retreated like we thought they would, and now we send our forces from Mogo there, trying to keep them all confronted there, while Hal Jordan and Tumar 2 battle it out without the connection of the Dark Star Mantle with the controllers. It's a really great scene. We got Kilowog, who's like with John Stewart as they come back to the Dark Stars planet, and I really like the artwork in this book. It's been really tremendous. And once John Stewart's crew gets to the planet, Guy Gardner's like, hey man, we're not going to let them get all the glory and let John have all the fun. So they kind of join in more of that. It's a really great time. The artwork's been tremendous. I like where this story's going. The ending was pretty good, because it's this battle, this final confrontation between Tumar 2 and Hal Jordan, and Hal Jordan even tells him, never question the will of Hal Jordan. And they're gonna battle it out in issue 50 of this book, which will be the final issue of the DC Rebirth Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. I actually did like tweet my opinions out on it, and the writer Rob Venditti actually got back to me and he said, you know what, thank you for reading the book. And I was like, well, you know, I enjoyed it, so yeah. So that's pretty much Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. I do know that, like I said, this is the final issue, which is the next book, which is issue 50, and then after that, they're going to start Grant Morrison and Liam Sharp's book, which is going to be called Green Lantern. It's going to be about Hal Jordan mainly as a space cop. So let's see what happens in that book. I know Grant Morrison likes to get complicated and at times wacky, and some semi like occultism, and I really enjoy Grant Morrison's past work. But let's see what happens on his run on Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. The first 50 issues of Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps is really great. It's a really great book. It's probably one of the best books in DC Rebirth. It was one of my favorite throughout all of it, which has been like the last 2.5 years or so of DC Rebirth. So, and I'm sure that you can buy all the trade copies, and maybe they'll put all 50 in one book. But, who knows? You probably just buy all the different individual trades. The Dark Star Mantle War is going to wrap up in the next book, and I'm sure there's going to be a final conclusion, and I hope that I really enjoy what's happening and what's going on in there. The next book that I want to talk about, though I don't have it right in front of me to reference off of, but is Flash number 51, and in this book, it's pretty much like a love letter about Wally West, and it tells about his struggles and his journey, and from the moment that he was born, and we're kind of seeing it from like Iris West's perspective. So she's like telling the story, she's writing it down about Wally, and during this time Barry's trying to like stop Wally, trying to find Wally. He knows where he is, but Wally hasn't stopped running since the end of Flash War. He's trying to find a way to find his kids. He's trying to do whatever he can, and honestly he keeps moving and he keeps running forward because he knows that as soon as he stops running, he's gonna have to start dealing with everything all at once. All the baggage of being trapped inside of the Speed Force during essentially DC New 52. He was trapped in the Speed Force. He pretty much accepted his own death at the beginning of DC Rebirth to begin with, when he tried to reach out to everybody to be his lightning rod, and no one would do it. Not even Linda Park, his wife who he had kids with, would be his lightning rod. And eventually he appeared in front of Barry Allen and he was like, "Hey Barry," and he said his final goodbye to Barry. He's like, you probably don't know me just like everybody else. And Barry did remember him, and slowly throughout DC Rebirth, people have started to remember who Wally West is, and some of the pre-New 52, pre-Crisis memories are starting to, appear in more people, and that's really cool because they're kind of like slowly weaving in the New 52 stuff more, or pre-New 52 rather, and pre-Crisis stuff keeps like sinking its way into people's memories. People like Psycho Pirate remember, and Wally West was there because Wally was removed from the timeline from Abracadabra during the events of the Flashpoint, so he wasn't like affected by any of that, or it has to do with Abracadabra, Flashpoint, and then Dr. Manhattan, because Dr. Manhattan messed with the timeline. We still assume that it's Dr. Manhattan anyway. It could be somebody else. Dr. Manhattan could be the good guy in the Doomsday Clock storyline, but who actually knows? Because they haven't for sure said. It's just been hinted at that it's Dr. Manhattan. But either way, Wally was removed from the table from a combination of 3 events: Abracadabra erasing him from the timeline, the Flashpoint, and the missing 10 years that were meddled with as a part of Flashpoint with assumably Dr. Manhattan. So the story of Flash 51, kind of like I said, it's like a love letter to Wally about him coming back. And from Iris's perspective, eventually Wally does stop running. And when he's there, he stops running in front of Barry and Iris, who are sitting down at a bench, because Iris tells Barry, "Hey Barry, you can't catch him. Wally's going to do what he does, and sit down with me and wait for me." Wally does eventually stop running, and he's sad. He's like, "I can't find them. I can't find my kids." And eventually him and Barry have a conversation, the one that they haven't had, that they were supposed to have, because they keep talking about it throughout Rebirth, is that Barry and Wally haven't really hashed out all of their feelings about Flashpoint and what that did to the timeline changes, and how that affected Wally and his family, and how people lost a lot of things during the very selfish change to save his mother, and then he had to rechange it anyway, but it never, and everything didn't get put back together right during the Flashpoint. So Barry and Wally haven't really had that conversation. They've kind of been kicking the can throughout DC Rebirth, and they finally had that conversation. We don't get to see that. We just get to see the two of them shouting, but Iris does tell us that they had that conversation, so that's good. And Wally finally accepts that he was tricked by Hunter Zolomon into breaking the Force barrier and getting rid of all the temporal energy in the Speed Force, because he was too emotionally invested in finding his children. I mean, that's hard to say, too emotional, because you can never put too much emotion into finding your children. But because of that, he was blind and unfocused going into it, and he allowed Hunter Zolomon to trick him. And I think that's basically, like I was kind of referencing at a little bit earlier, is that Wally West came back to a timeline where no one remembered him. They didn't know who he was. His own friends, the person who he was married to and had children with, they didn't remember him. Barry Allen almost didn't remember him. And he had accepted his death, and then Barry brought him back in. But still, the Titans didn't remember him. And as he hugged them and touched them, eventually, that sounds weird, hugged and touched them, but they were battling with the Titans. And every time they touched him in the fight, they remember some of their memories with him. And he has some with them too, because the longer he's in the timeline, the more his timelines start reassimilating with what that timeline is. That kind of is the general rule of every time traveler for the most part. But people slowly start remembering him, but he still lived a lonely life throughout DC Rebirth, Wally West that is. And he's finally confronting all this, and then finding out that his children exist, but they're somewhere and he can't save them, and knowing that Hunter tricked him. And everything that's happening with his life, he cracked, and it got recommended that he get sent to Sanctuary, which is where the DC comic heroes, and I think probably some of the anti-heroes go to when they deal with post-traumatic issues, like stressful issues, things that tax on them, seeing somebody die who they tried to save, not being able to save somebody, just the emotional toll that being a superhero takes in general. They go to this place called Sanctuary, and so Superman and Wonder Woman come and take Wally West. He agrees to it, obviously, because he wants to get help, because before he can help try to find his kids, he needs to help himself so he can be at 100%. And that is going to bring us into Heroes in Crisis, which is coming out in September, which is going to deal with Sanctuary, and there's going to be a murder mystery within Sanctuary, and I think that's a little lame. I think that the book would be a little bit better if it did just focus purely on the superhero's time at Sanctuary, but something is amuck at Sanctuary. Something's going to happen, and there are rumors. This is spoiler territory, and I don't know if it's 100% confirmed or not. There are rumors that Wally West might be the quote-unquote killer in Heroes in Crisis, and I hope that's not the case. And then there's also further rumors that Wally West is going to be in the new Suicide Squad book when they reboot that book, and that's weird to me as well. But if he is the killer, it makes sense that he's being put to Suicide Squad. So I don't know what's happening with Wally West as a character, but I'm really worried and scared about that. Maybe they want to put him in Suicide Squad to boost the sales of the book, because people love Wally West, and Wally West is big. Harley Quinn's big, but Wally is big as well, so you throw him on the crew. And then that made me thinking, like, if they're going to put Wally West on the crew, does that have something to do with Daniel West? Is Daniel West going to come back in? Because Daniel West is technically Wally's uncle, and he is Wally number 2's father. So I do think that he died being a hero on the Suicide Squad. So maybe we're going to see something, and this is crazy and wacky and just a theory, but maybe he's trying to find Daniel West, or maybe Daniel West finds him on a mission that they do if Wally ends up on the Suicide Squad. And then maybe further, Godspeed is involved with that, because Godspeed was saved or pulled from the timeline during their last fight during that battle with Grodd there in the negative Speed Force storm. He was pulled at the end of that from somebody mysterious. Maybe that mysterious person was Daniel West, and we'll see the two of them working together in either some good or evil or some redeeming storyline. I don't know. Maybe all three of them are going to redeem themselves. That's all hypothetical, and I have no idea, like, the theory that I'm trying to formulate quite yet. But I would like to see Daniel West return. Also in this book, Flash 51, Wally West kind of is like leaving the book. I should say Wallace West, Wally West number 2, Kid Flash, seems to be leaving this book as he wants to distance himself from Barry and Wally, because he's mad at them that they kind of leave him out on things, especially the bigger things. And he's going to be more focused in the Titans book, or the Teen Titans book rather. So, which I haven't read the new, since they rebooted it with like Lobo's daughter or whatever. I haven't read that book yet, but I know Kid Flash and Damian Wayne are in it. So that's probably going to be where Kid Flash is going to be focused. We also have Bart Allen that came at the end of 50, and that wasn't addressed at all in 51. So let's see what happens with Bart Allen and just Flash in general. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I really enjoyed the book. The artwork was really good. The story was like a fan service to Wally West, and we did get to see some of the stuff that we're going to expect going forward from there. But yeah, that was Flash number 51. The last book that I want to talk about in this podcast is Doomsday Clock number 6. And yeah, if you don't remember, we ended the 5th book on the rooftop of Gotham City PD with the Joker, Mime, and Marionette, and Batman was just knocked unconscious by the crowd who pulled him down and beat him, and then the Joker's gang brought Batman up to the roof where Joker, Mime, and Marionette were. So the Joker has Batman in a wheelchair, strapped up, and he put more toxin inside of him to keep Batman unconscious. And in this book, we actually see like an origin for both Marionette mainly, and then Mime as well. And in the because the story goes back and forth throughout the book, but for podcast purpose and talking to you purpose, the backstory of Marionette and Mime is that Marionette's father was a puppet maker, and he was an immigrant as well. He was brought into the country by either a mob or a police force that worked with the mob, and he was doing some kind of racket with them, probably smuggling to some extent. I don't think it exactly says where he was, but he was definitely paying them money and doing something that he felt guilty about doing, and the police kept coming and hustling him and beating him up, and the daughter had to see this happen. We learned that eventually the father makes Erica, who is Marionette, a puppet for her to use, and it looks like the Marionette puppet that she has, the Marionette costume. It already looks like that. So there's something where all the neighborhood girls or the neighborhood kids are picking on Erica, and they're attacking her, and they actually go as far to call her like a whore and a slut and an immigrant, this and that. And I thought that was crazy wild and out there, especially because at the time during the flashback, Erica's probably like 10 at most, and she's getting beat up by these other neighborhood girls, and they're calling her names of pretty offensive nature. And as she's getting beat up, this little boy who his parents just moved into town, and they run a shop from across the street. He became friends with Erica because he came over when he saw the puppets, and she showed him all the puppets, and he'd never talked at all to her, and that's going to be Marcos Mayaz, the mime. And so while Erica is getting attacked, Marcos comes over and smashes a few of the kids with some bottles, which is pretty extreme, and then Erica beats up the main girl and grabs her puppet back, and she's bashing her in the face. She covered herself in the other little girl's blood. And when they go back to the shop, Erica and Marcos, the cops are pressing against Erica's father again, and he's like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to give you money. And the cops even tell Marcos, oh, you're for the kid from across the street. Shame what happened to your mother. And he didn't know what happened, so he ran over. We later find out that his mother also didn't agree to this racket scheme that the cops were a part of, and so the cops actually pushed her down a flight of stairs, and I believe she dies. So after Marcos leaves, Erica sees the cops beating up her father because he doesn't want to be a part of this racket anymore. He just more so wants to have his puppet shop, live in America, and give his daughter a better life than what he had. But the cops actually keep beating him up. They grab Erica and tell him that we own you. The boss brought you overseas, so you work for him. And by extension, he owns you. And that means he owns your daughter as well. So if you don't keep doing this and working with us, then maybe we're going to have to bring your daughter in to the boss. And so eventually he tells them where the money is, and they do leave. Now, after that, Erica goes across the street to talk to Marcos. Well, not talk to him because he doesn't talk back, but to see what happened to his mother. His mother is actually dead. The cops actually went as far as to say that she didn't pay up, and so something happened, and she got pushed down a flight of stairs by them, and that could happen to her father as well. So his mother is dead. Marcos' mother is dead, and then eventually the two of them walk back to Erica's father's shop, and we actually see that he hung himself. And that's pretty crazy because he's dead now, and he left Erica a note saying, I'm sorry, but they have no reason to look for you. They need something from me. And without me here, you can take the money in the cash register, run away, and have a fresh new life for yourself. And I'm sorry that this had to happen, but I did this as a parent for you to have any chance of a life outside of this situation that he's in. And as she's reading this note, the cops actually come back in. They see that he hung himself, and they're grabbing her, and eventually she actually stabs one of them in the neck. And then Marcos Mayaz comes in and bites one of them. And then she chokes one of the other ones with the puppet string wire. And the two of them kill the cops that are there. And because they kind of been like pushed to the edge. They lived a really shitty life, and circumstances would force them down a certain path. And that's just the choices that they made. And that's how they became Mime and Marionette is basically because the two puppets that they were given, the one that Erica got from her father, and then at some point in the book, Erica was given another puppet that she designed to look like a mime because Marcos never talked, and so she gave that puppet to him. And so that's kind of how they became Mime and Marionette. Now, they are from the Watchmen universe, and they did come in with Ozymandias because they're looking for their child, which Ozymandias says that he can get them access to their child, because the two of them had a child together, I believe, in jail in the Watchmen universe, and it was taken away from them as soon as the child was born, and that was briefly mentioned in this comic, and it was mentioned before in either Doomsday Clock 1 or 2, I don't exactly remember at the moment, but we kind of went back to that. Meanwhile, in the present day, we got Joker, who has Batman in a wheelchair, and he's kind of pushing him around with Mime and Marionette and some of the Joker gang members, and they're going through like the sewers as Joker's on his way to a meeting. He then sees like these Mr. Freeze goons who are wearing like the hooded jackets with the, you know, kind of like Captain Cold type jacket, because they're Joker or Mr. Freeze gang members, and they even say, "Oh, is that him? Oh, I hope that's not him. Shit, that's the Joker. He's seen us." And then Joker walks over and he talks to them about Mr. Freeze, and they say that they're not even sure where Mr. Freeze is because of the whole Superman theory thing that's going on, where people believe that the government created metahumans for weapon purposes to be government weapons. And so like a lot of the supervillains are on the down low right now, and some of them are trying to flee the country to go to Kandar and Black Adam, where he offered sanctuary to anybody who has meta powers over there, as he has like diplomatic immunity for his whole entire country. So Mr. Freeze isn't his people don't know where he is. So Joker says, "Oh, there's an opening at the why don't you join our gang?" And they kind of are left with no choice at that point. And Joker says, "Hey!" He pulls out his tattoo artist, and his name is like Shaky or something. And so the guy tattoos the guys. The tattoo artist tattoos the Mr. Freeze guys. And then Joker says, "Oh, Mime and Marionette, you got to do it too." And they're pretty much asserting, no, they agree with the Joker to some extent, and they can relate with him as like a villain who's like a character the same way they are, and that they're similar in that mentality of destruction and chaos. But they're not exactly like the Joker. They're different. They're their own characters. They're not just the Watchmen version of Joker and Harley Quinn. They're their own characters with their own motivation that we actually saw in this backstory and the origin from this comic book. So they don't agree to do that, which Joker is okay with to an extent, but eventually they're forced to, Mime and Marionette are forced to kill some of Joker's thugs, and Joker actually even goes, "Oh, get off of him, why don't you?" And then he shoots his own guy instead. Now Joker then, Mime, Marionette, and Joker go to this meeting, which is being led by several villains of the DC universe, and Mr. Freeze is even there, and the Freeze gang guys are like, "Oh, Mr. Freeze is there, I hope he doesn't hate our tattoos or whatever." But this meeting is being led by the Riddler, and he's talking about the Superman theory, and he's talking about one of the people that they believe came forward with information to the government or to the news outlets, which is Typhoon, and I forget the other character's name, but they're accusing Typhoon of this and that, and they can't have traitors amongst them, and some of them are talking about going to Kandar and Black Adam's country there. Hagante, I believe her name is, talks about going there. So you got all these villains talking about it, and then the Joker wheels Batman in on a wheelchair all tied up, and he's like, "Hey guys, look what I've got, the Batman." And Riddler's like, "Oh man, really? This is like the 8th Batman you've wheeled into us with a wheelchair. Who isn't? Is it going to be somebody from Arkham? Is it just one of the guards or whatever?" And they're all talking about this, and then Typhoon starts yelling and raging, and then as Typhoon's yelling, he straight up gets shot in the face. And then we see that the comedian is there, and the comedian just killed Typhoon, and the comedian is going in to kill, and he's trying to get probably Mime and Marionette, and maybe the Joker as well, and he's there with purpose, and he's pretty much like a badass out of hell. He's like what Jason Todd was when he came back as the Red Hood. He's killing, he's merciless. He shoots the Riddler in the leg. Riddler falls down. Everybody's running away. He drops a big bomb down in the facility, and Mime and Marionette know who the comedian is, so they know to get the fuck out of there. But Joker's like, this is beautiful. This turned out to be one of the best days around. And that was really cool or whatever. So The comedian is trying to follow them, and Mime and Marionette do get away, and they do their own thing. And then we actually see Mime and Marionette like talking about their child, but at the same time, like, oh, we need to find our child and this and that. But then at the same time, the two of them are like having sex in the panels, and it's like you can clearly see what's happening in the scenes, and it's a little more detailed than what you're used to. As I do think that Doomsday Clock should have probably ultimately been a part of the DC Black Label, but you know, it's not, and it's in its own little thing. It sets like two years ahead of the DC Rebirth mainline continuity or whatever. But we see those scenes, and as they're having sex, the comedian actually comes in and says like, "I only need one of you." You guys, I think he's gonna bring him to Dr. Manhattan or whatever to find Ozymandias. He goes, "I only need one of you to find Ozymandias," because that's who he's looking for ultimately right now. Because he did track Ozymandias down in issue 2 or 3, and he tried to kill him. He knocked him out of the window, and he assaulted Lex Luthor, the comedian that is. But he comes in and he breaks in as the two of them having sex together, and then is that exactly how the book ends? That's not. Yeah, they're having sex. Boom, panel. Oh yeah, and then as he's standing over the top of them, the Joker shocks the comedian in the back with the hand shocker, and he falls down. And that's kind of where we're left off, in that Mime and Marionette say, "Oh, I bet you the comedian knows where to find Dr. Manhattan." And so now the Joker wants to find Dr. Manhattan, and so that's where we're going forward from Doomsday Clock. I do know that the next issue, because of the solicits, suggests that we are going to finally see Dr. Manhattan in issue 7 of Doomsday Clock, and maybe we're going to finally learn some of his motivations, why he's in the DC universe instead of the Watchmen universe. What is he doing here? Maybe we're going to learn some of these things that we've been waiting to find out for the last, what is it now, 2.5 years of DC Rebirth. I can't wait to read that issue. I thought this issue was really great. As the Mime and Marionette backstory is really good. It's really compelling. I really liked learning about that. The father in the doll shop back in the past story hid the money for the cops, and it was in the Night Owl doll that he made, which I think is a hint at us getting Night Owl soon, because we still haven't seen him or the Silk Spectre, and I do expect to see them at some point in Dr. Manhattan, as we've only really gotten the comedian, the Dr. Manhattan's like leg or his hand, and then we got Ozymandias. And Mime and Marionette are more so like new characters for this story. They are based on old Charlton Comics characters, but they are original for Doomsday Clock. Either way, I did enjoy these 3 comic books. They're my highlights of the week. I do recommend all 3 of them. I did also read like Superman, Action Comics number 1001 from Bendis with the Superman and the fire and all that stuff like that, and that was okay. It wasn't my favorite issue of the week. These are my key 3 for the week. I'm going to leave you with DC Comics releases for August 1st, 2018, which is next Wednesday. We're going to get Batman 52, which is going to continue the story with the Cold Case with Mr. Freeze. And I know that's going to lead into some stuff with KG Beast and all of that Russian connections there. The next book is DC Nation number 3. The first one was free, the second one is free, I think the third one's free as well. There's no price attached to it. Deathstroke 34, don't know what's happening there. Green Arrow number 43, Oliver Queen. We got Green Lanterns number 52, Harley Quinn number 47, Injustice 2 number 31. We also have Justice League 5 from Scott Snyder, so that should be pretty swell. Mr. Miracle number 10 is finally coming out, written by Tom King. I love that book. Probably going to be one of my favorite books of the week next week. Also, The Adventures of the Super Sons 1 of 12 comes out. That's a story that's going to take place like within DC Rebirth, but like a few months ago, because it involves Damian and Jonathan as the Super Sons. And if you know what's happening with Superman's story, Jonathan is off on a space adventure with his mother and his grandfather Jor-El, and he's learning more about his powers, and he's going to grow up and all this fun stuff, or whatever's happening. So they're doing Super Sons again, but it's happening like in the past DC Rebirth time. So that's going to be really cool. Any other books? Like I said, Mr. Miracle number 10, Nightwing number 47, Shade the Changeling Woman number 6 of 6, And The Unexpected number 3, I did a review for The Unexpected number 2 on comicbookcorpse.com. You can check that out there. That was a pretty fun read, and I enjoyed the first 2 issues of that book. So let's see what happens on the next one. I don't think I can have any other topics to talk about right now at the moment. Either way, if you like what you've heard here, go back and watch my other 2 post-crisis podcasts. I have my dramatic readings on my channel where I bring comic books to life with character, voice acting, narration, effects, and all that fun stuff. And I do video game plays, whatever. I do Let's Plays. I have all kinds of stuff like this on my channel. Like and subscribe if you're not. I'm Keith One Shot. Take care, have a great day, and goodbye!